Hello and welcome to Nightlight's Orientation to International Adoption. Once you view this video, a follow-up telephone call will be scheduled with your program coordinator to allow us to get to know you better and to answer any questions you may have concerning the material presented in this webinar. When you received the orientation email, you probably noticed it had many links to additional information. I urge you to save this email, bookmark it, print it, or do whatever you need to do to keep it because you will be required to access the checklists as you complete your parent education and prepare your dossier, and may need to refer to some of the information. In order to access the checklists in our portal, you'll need to sign in using the same email and password you created when you filled out your application. There's a link posted here and in the email for password help should you require it. We will be discussing several items to help you get started on your adoption journey, and hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a better grasp on all that's required and an idea of where you need to start. It's common to feel very overwhelmed, but there are ways to break the process into parts so that it becomes more manageable. Today we'll go over Hague orientation topics, talk about choosing a home study provider, touch on parent education, discuss filing the I-800A with the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, explain the service plan, and dossier instructions. Nightlight has been in operation since the 1950s. In addition to many international programs, we also offer domestic adoption, home study services, foster care programs, and we pioneered the Snowflakes embryo adoption program. The Colorado office was opened when our original president, Ron Stoddard, moved from Southern California to Colorado in 2008, and today we have offices in 10 different states. The best way I found to go through the documents is to have you open the orientation email, open the orientation document checklist, and then I'll go through each document explaining its purpose and talking about specifics. Please be sure to write down any questions you may have so your program coordinator can answer them during the follow-up phone call. The first document I want you to open is the Hague orientation topics. It's important that you read this document thoroughly, but I'm going to hit some of the highlights. Anyone who's adopting internationally must have an approved home study, apply to receive a pre-approval to adopt from the USCIS, United States Citizen and Immigration Service, and prepare a set of documents called a dossier, which we will be submitting to Colombia for approval. Different countries require different documents, so that is why the dossier instructions are specific to Colombia. All templates provided to you are from the Central Authority of Adoption in Colombia, which is called ICBF, and cannot be modified. Children awaiting adoption in Colombia are either in foster care, but some are in institutions. And any time that a child is in less than optimal care, they're at risk for malnourishment, delays in any or all areas of development, unhealthy living conditions, sickness, and abuse that may include emotional, physical, and/or sexual abuse. These children all have trauma in their backgrounds from abandonment, inconsistent caregiving, and substandard care. This is why parent education is an important part of the adoption process to help prepare you for your child's needs when they come home. Conditions that affect children in Colombia who are available for intercountry adoption are generally from abuse or neglect or abandonment by their biological parents, much like the foster care system in the United States. This is part of a systemic issue that may be due to various issues such as poverty, substance abuse, cartel or gang activity, or illness. In general, the children available for intercountry adoption are children over the age of 10, sibling sets of 3 or more, and young children who have moderate to severe special needs. These children have not been placed successfully with a Colombian family in country, so permanency outside the country is sought as a last resort. Colombia does allow those with dual citizenship of Colombian and American to go on the waiting list for a clinically healthy child of any age, but is only those with Colombian citizenship. The most current laws and adoption process from Colombia can be found on ICBF's website. ICBF also licenses and supervises a few AYAPAs, which are institutions that can process intercountry adoption. Because IAPAs are private entities, they charge an additional fee to process the adoption. Nightlight works with ICBF and IAPAs and have found that in general the process with IAPAs tends to move faster than with ICBF. Regardless, it is ICBF's authority to ultimately approve a family for adoption and issue a referral. Hosting a child from Colombia does not guarantee you will be issued a referral from ICBF. However, Nightlight will assist you in mitigating any issues and submitting documents as required by ICBF once your eligibility into our program is determined. Eligibility requirements can be found on the United States Department of State website, and Nightlight may also have additional eligibility requirements that the country itself does not. That is one reason our application form asks so many questions. We want to ensure that you're eligible to adopt from the program you desire. The trend and climate of inter-country adoption has declined by almost 70% since 2004. The reason for this decline is a result of the shift in political acceptance of inter-country adoption. Most nations navigate two opposing forces, trying to accommodate adoptive parents and the needs of orphans while also satisfying powerful anti-adoption influences. The increasing difficulty in adopting internationally is actually intentional and meant to reduce the number of adoptions. The motive behind the anti-adoption movement is complicated, but includes national pride, political retaliation, and a well-meaning but naive desire to prefer indigenous orphan care solutions. It's important to note that our agency has no control over the rate and timing at which referrals are made by Colombian officials. While many children with special needs are available, agencies have no control over the children that are made available for adoption. Your openness to gender, age range, and various medical conditions will affect the length of time you may wait for a match. The more open a family's criteria for their child, the more quickly they'll be matched compared to families who request a very young female with minor special needs. If you host a child from Colombia that you wish to adopt, your wait time for referral is reduced. However, you'll still follow the same approval and adoption process as all other foreign families adopting from Colombia. Once you receive a referral of a child, you will have at least 2 weeks to review the referral documents. You will also be required to do child-specific training. This is a requirement from our Department of State. Once this is complete, you will submit an I-800 application packet to USCIS, which notifies them of the specific child you intend to adopt. With that approval, the U.S. government issues an Article 5 letter and you're clear to travel to Colombia. You'll receive your child as soon as you get to Colombia for an integration period. After that, your case goes to court for the adoption. A Colombian passport will be issued with your child's new adopted name, and a U.S. visa will be issued. This special visa allows the child to become a U.S. citizen immediately upon arrival to the U.S. You will be accompanied by a driver and English-speaking companion for the duration of your trip in Colombia, and this is included in your program fees. Finally, there are many holidays in Colombia when government agencies are shut down for an extended period of time. Easter and Christmas are particularly sparse in terms of staffing, which slows down the process. We do not recommend traveling before one of these holidays and extending your process in Colombia, as there will be little support in country after the child's placed with you. Now let's talk about post-adoption reports. Colombia requires 4 post-adoption reports. A social worker will come to your home to complete the 6-month, 1-year, 18-month, and 2-year report. Post-adoption obligations should be taken very seriously. Our agency is held personally responsible for the supervision of your placement. It's very important that you comply with reporting, as adoption programs are placed in jeopardy when families do not fulfill this obligation. Failure to complete post-adoption reporting puts our program at risk and may prohibit future families from adopting orphan children. Please take note that we have very strongly worded language regarding post-adoption report obligations in the agreements you've signed for our agency, which allows us to take you to court for non-compliance. While we haven't had to file a court case, we have had to send letters reminding families of their promise. It's also important to note that the U.S. Department of State enforces post-adoption compliance. Failure to comply will also affect any plans you have to adopt in the future. One last thing regarding Hague topics. No fees should ever be paid to a foreign supervised provider, an adoption central authority, or any person involved in your adoption case in a foreign country without written permission from your Nightlight coordinator. Historically, this has not been a problem with Colombia, but if you're asked to pay any fees in country that are not outlined on your adoption fee schedule, notify our office immediately. Bribes are strictly prohibited and will be reported to the U.S. Department of State. I've gone over most everything in this document. If you've thoroughly read it and understand, you can sign it electronically, date, and submit. Of course, if you have questions about the content, be sure to ask those during the telephone follow-up. Next, we'll talk about choosing a home study provider. Nightlight is your placing agency for your adoption. If you live in a state where we have an office, we'll also be your home study agency. If you live outside of our service area states, you must choose a home study provider, and it's imperative that your home study agency is Hague accredited. If you live in a state served by Nightlight, you will soon be contacted by that office to begin the home study process. If you do not, please ask your program coordinator for the home study agencies we recommend. Finally, once your application has been accepted by the home study provider agency, please complete and upload the home study provider information sheet in the International Orientation checklist. It's very important that you return this before you begin the home study process. The first reason is because Nightlight must have an exempt provider agreement in place with the agency prior to you beginning the home study, which we will take care of. And secondly, we will ensure the home study provider is Hague accredited as required. This is very important. If you begin the home study process prior to providing Nightlight with your home study provider information, you may have to choose a different provider, which could result in losing money you paid to the previous home study provider. Once your home study is completed, which can take anywhere from 2 to 4 months, depending on how quickly you and your social worker are able to obtain documentation, you'll be ready to file Form I-800A. This is the application for determination of suitability to adopt a child from a convention country with USCIS. We can assist you with filling out the form and require you to email the completed form to us for review before shipping it to USCIS. The I-800A form is a notification to USCIS that you plan to adopt from a specific country. In addition, the home study sent with the application also states your child preference. For example, number of children, age, gender, and special needs you're open to. The child preference will also be stated on your I-800A approval. The child you refer to must match the child you're approved for, or the child will not be permitted to immigrate. When you received the orientation email and opened the portal, you had access to an orientation document checklist, as well as a separate checklist for international parent education documents. A link was provided to a webinar explaining Nightlight's parent education requirements. If you've not yet watched this, you must do so that your parent education will not be delayed. As a recap, all families are required to complete 10 hours of Hague education prior to completing their home study. Additional requirements consist of reading about and understanding post-adoption stress and depression, completing a post-adoption support plan, learning about the history and culture of your child's country, speaking with a parent who is previously adopted through Nightlight, and reading a book entitled The Connected Child. The next document I want to bring to your attention is the Child Preference Form. This is a document that's used to identify your preferences for a child, such as gender, age range, and medical needs. It's important to understand that this document may be updated throughout the process to adjust your preferences as you continue being educated about adoption, talking to others who have adopted children with specific needs, and meeting with medical professionals to determine what you feel you can handle. This form is used by your social worker in writing your approval statement in the home study and by our program team as we watch the shared list for children. The service plan is a document that identifies the 6 adoption services that are rendered in inter-country adoptions and who is responsible for each service. Nightlight Christian Adoptions is your primary provider and placing agency for your international adoption. As the primary provider, we will coordinate your adoption, help identify a child for adoption, and arrange for the adoption with the sending country. We will also work with the agency providing your home study and coordinate with the staff to provide translation and travel arrangements. As your primary service provider, Nightlight is available to assist you, whether you're in the United States or traveling abroad. We will be working with the Central Authority of Adoption in the foreign country. They're responsible for identifying children who are available for adoption and arranging the adoptions, securing the necessary paperwork showing termination of parental rights and agreement to adoption. The Central Authority in the foreign country approves the child background study, and your home study provider will perform the home study on you as the prospective adoptive parent. You will not have direct contact with the Central Authority in a foreign country until you travel. The Central Authority works with our in-country coordinator to ensure that the foreign laws are being followed with regard to adoptions. On this form, please fill in the name of your home study agency and their phone number, as well as the social worker from that agency and their contact information. Nightlight and your home study provider will make non-judicial determinations of the best interests of a child and the appropriateness of an adoptive placement for the child. The Central Authority of the foreign country, in conjunction with Nightlight, will monitor a case after a child's been placed in your family until final adoption in country. If you should decide to disrupt the adoption before it becomes final, our agency will work with the foreign Central Authority to assume custody and provide care until the child can be placed back in permanent care. Also in this document is a list of contacts at Nightlight who work in the country program you're adopting from. Please contact any of your program staff with any issues you're having at any time. In short, international adoption is a big deal, and it's an honor to be part of your journey. We know it can be draining and overwhelming and want to provide support and services that meet your needs. Your adoption will be finalized while you're in country, and when you return home, you will be expected to continue to work with your home study provider to complete post-adoption reports. Your home study provider will visit you at specified times following the adoption to provide consultation on adjustment, help you identify or problem solve any issues that have arisen, and write a report to send along with photos of your child to Nightlight, who will forward them to the foreign country. Please check your service plan for the report schedule required. Again, timely compliance is necessary. It's important to know, and you'll be reminded of this throughout the process, that if you're struggling with your adoption plan or having adjustment issues with the child when you get home, please contact us and let us help you identify resources and rally your family, friends, church, and other professionals to provide support and guidance to you. We have a post-adoption connection center ready and willing to provide resources to families. A lot of Nightlight staff are also adoptive parents. We've experienced going through this process, soaking up all the information, learning what we could, and wanting to prove that we're worthy to adopt, so we understand how hard it is to go back to these same people and admit that you need help. But we want you to be successful, and we know that sometimes there's a lot of stress and struggle through transition phase and beyond. We want to be a beacon of light to you and work with you to ensure a successful placement, a well-adjusted child, an attached, happy, and healthy family. Once you can fill in your home study provider information to this document, please sign it, date it, and upload it to the portal. The last thing is the dossier instruction booklet. I trust that you're able to read the booklet and watch the dossier video, which touched on some specific items. I encourage you to contact your program coordinator to discuss any questions you have about the dossier instructions. To wrap up the orientation, I want to remind you of the checklist on our online portal with some orientation documents you need to either sign and upload or sign electronically. Be sure to watch the video explaining our parent education requirements and look at all of the parent education documents under the International Parent Education Checklist in our portal. You will also need to watch the video explaining the dossier instructions. Please do not just watch the video. It's also important that you read the entire booklet, which contains more specific information about the dossier. And you're probably wondering, where in the world do I start and what do I do next? My suggestion is to talk to agencies who can complete your home study. Once you contact them and sign a contract, you can finish the service plan and home study information sheet in the orientation checklist. Make sure they're approved as your home study provider, and then you can begin your parent education. Don't forget to submit documents as they're completed. In addition, we always want you to feel free to contact us with any questions, comments, or concerns you may have. If you're working with a Nightlight office for your home study, your program coordinator will notify the home study office that you're ready to start once you've completed the follow-up orientation phone call. Please email your Nightlight program coordinator after you've watched all the videos and are ready to have the follow-up orientation phone call. Thank you and enjoy your day.